And your grandmother has probably been doing it every morning for the last 40 years. No heart rate monitor, no app, no training plan, no gym membership. Just walking, slowly, around the block, in shoes that were never designed for performance. But the fitness industry has spent decades telling us that walking barely counts as exercise, that real progress, especially as we age, requires intervals, weights, or high-intensity effort. And that's why today I want to walk you through what actually happens inside a 75-year-old body during a 30-minute walk, why that simple movement engages biological systems that high-intensity training often misses, and how the research on aging and movement is far more interesting than the slogan, "No pain, no gain." A quick contract before we begin. The title of this video makes a strong claim. I am not going to repeat that claim as if it were settled science, because it isn't. Walking is not literally the only exercise a human body was designed for. Evolution shaped us for a wide range of movement: short sprints, climbing, carrying loads, recovering from injury. What I will do is something more useful. I will explain why walking, in the specific context of a body over 75, is the most well-matched form of movement most people will ever do. I will show you 3 mechanisms: cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, and neurological. I will separate what is well established from what is still preliminary. And by the end, you will know exactly how to use walking as a serious, evidence-informed part of an aging body without turning it into a miracle cure. If you are a person over 75, this is for you. If you care for one, this is also for you. Let's begin. Before we look at what happens when an older person walks, we need a quick picture of what is happening when they sit still. By the time a person reaches 75, several things have quietly changed inside the body. The lining of blood vessels, the endothelium, produces less nitric oxide, the molecule that keeps vessels flexible and responsive. Capillary density in skeletal muscle has typically decreased. The mitochondria, the small engines inside each cell, are less efficient at turning fuel into usable energy. Muscle mass has been declining at roughly 1 to 2% per year since the mid-50s, a process called sarcopenia. Bone density has usually dropped, particularly in postmenopausal women. And the connections between neurons in regions like the hippocampus, the part of the brain central to memory, have become slightly thinner. None of this is a catastrophe on its own. The body is still working, but it is working with less reserve, which means the type of stimulus it receives matters far more than it did at 30. Now here's the part most people get wrong. Most adults over 75 have been told one of 2 things. The first is that they should not push themselves. The body is fragile, and the safest choice is rest. The second, often delivered by a well-meaning trainer or a fitness influencer, is that they need high-intensity intervals, heavy lifting, or vigorous exercise to get any meaningful benefit. Both messages are incomplete. The first one leads to something researchers call the disuse spiral. When an older adult stops moving, the cardiovascular system, the muscles, the bones, and even the brain all deteriorate faster than they would otherwise. Rest in this context is not neutral. Rest is a stimulus too, a stimulus for decline. The second message, the go hard message, ignores something that the science of aging has been very clear about for at least a decade. High-intensity training, especially when introduced suddenly, dramatically increases the risk of musculoskeletal injury, cardiac events in sedentary individuals, and dropout. And dropout is the most important variable of all, because the best exercise is the one a person actually does for the next 20 years. So neither rest nor intensity is the answer. What we are looking for is something in between, a stimulus that the aging body can absorb, repeat, and benefit from day after day without breaking down. That stimulus is walking. Here is the first mechanism, the cardiovascular metabolic coupling. When a 75-year-old person walks at a comfortable pace, 3 things happen almost simultaneously inside the circulatory system. The first is shearing stress. As blood flows through the arteries, the gentle, rhythmic movement of walking increases the velocity of blood against the vessel wall. That mechanical force is sensed by the endothelial cells. In response, they produce more nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the molecule that tells the artery to relax, dilate, and stay elastic. A 2013 review in the journal Hypertension summarized this clearly. Regular walking improves endothelial function in older adults, often within a few weeks. The second is capillary recruitment. Muscles that have been sitting all day are using only a fraction of their capillaries. Walking opens the closed ones. Over time, this increases the surface area available for oxygen exchange, which means the heart does not have to work as hard to deliver the same amount of fuel. The third is mitochondrial signaling. Walking is not so intense that it overwhelms the aging cell, but it is enough to trigger a mild cellular stress response. Cells respond to that stress by repairing and modestly increasing the number and efficiency of their mitochondria. In the scientific literature, this is called mitohormesis, and it is one of the most consistent findings in exercise research on aging. What matters here is the pattern. Walking does not create a spike of stress followed by collapse. It creates a small, repeated, manageable signal that the body interprets as "keep the system running, do not let it rust." After roughly 10 minutes of walking, this trio of effects, endothelial, capillary, and mitochondrial, is already engaged. After 30 minutes, it's fully active. After several weeks of repeated sessions, the adaptations begin to compound. The resting heart rate tends to drop slightly. Blood pressure tends to fall modestly. Insulin sensitivity improves. None of these are dramatic. All of them are real, and all of them are biologically meaningful for a person in their mid-70s. Here is the first practical reward before we move forward. You do not need to walk fast. You do not need to walk for an hour. A continuous conversational pace, the kind where you could still talk to a companion without gasping, for about 25 to 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times per week, is enough to activate this entire cardiovascular metabolic system. This is not a guess. It is consistent with the activity thresholds used in the physical activity guidelines of the World Health Organization for older adults. So the first thing to take away is this: a slow walk is not a wasted walk. It is a vascular workout, a metabolic signal, and a mitochondrial tune-up all happening at the same time. And it requires almost no recovery. Now, cardiovascular function is only one of the 3 systems. The second one is just as interesting, and it is the one that the fitness industry usually ignores. Let's talk about the mechanical signaling system. Every time your foot strikes the ground during a walk, a small mechanical load travels up through the bones of the leg, the pelvis, the spine. It is not the load of a sprint or a jump. It is roughly 1.5 times body weight, repeated, rhythmic, predictable. That is exactly the kind of load bone tissue needs in order to maintain itself. Bone is not a static structure. It is a living tissue that is constantly being broken down by cells called osteoclasts and rebuilt by cells called osteoblasts. The rebuilding is driven by mechanical signals. When a person lies in bed for a week, the rate of bone loss accelerates dramatically, sometimes up to 1% of hip bone density in a single week. When a person walks regularly, the rebuilding side of that equation catches up. The second part of this mechanical story is muscle. Skeletal muscle responds to load the same way bone does, but with a slightly different biology. Walking activates the large muscles of the lower body, the gluteals, the quadriceps, the calves, at roughly 20 to 30% of maximum effort. That's light, but it's enough to trigger muscle protein synthesis, the cellular process that repairs and rebuilds muscle fibers. For an older adult, this is not a cosmetic effect. It is the difference between staying mobile and losing the ability to climb stairs. The third part is the connective tissue. Tendons, ligaments, and cartilage all respond to rhythmic loading by becoming slightly more elastic and better hydrated. Joints that move regularly stay lubricated. Joints that don't move begin to stiffen within days. The crucial detail here is intensity. A high-impact exercise like running produces a ground reaction force of roughly 2 to 3 times body weight per step. For a young body, that's manageable. For a body with thinner cartilage, reduced muscle mass, and slower recovery, that same force multiplies the risk of stress fractures, tendinopathy, and falls. Walking produces a much smaller force, but it produces it consistently. And consistency, over months and years, is what builds tissue. So the second mechanism is this. Walking is the only common form of exercise that delivers a load high enough to maintain bone, muscle, and joint health, and low enough to do so without the injury risk that derails most training programs in older adults.
Let me put this in a more concrete frame. Imagine two 76-year-old women. They have similar bodies, similar histories, similar medications. They both want to stay independent. The first one joins a high-intensity program because her son told her that walking is for old people, meaning in his mind, people older than her. She goes hard. Within 3 weeks, she has a sore Achilles tendon. She pushes through it because the program told her that soreness is growth. Within 5 weeks, the tendon is inflamed enough that walking hurts. She stops. She does not return for a year. In that year, she loses muscle mass, balance confidence, and social contact. The second one starts with a 30-minute walk 3 times a week at a pace she can maintain while talking. She does this for 3 months. Her resting heart rate drops. Her sleep improves. Her knees feel a bit better, not worse, because the joint is being lubricated and the surrounding muscles are getting stronger. She gradually extends one of the walks to 45 minutes. After 6 months, she adds a short set of bodyweight squats at home twice a week because the walking gave her the confidence to do so. These are illustrative, they are not data points, but they are consistent with what the research has repeatedly shown. Adherence, not intensity, is the variable that determines outcome in older adults. The third mechanism is the one I find most fascinating, and it is the one that is least appreciated. It is the link between walking and the brain. Walking is biomechanically one of the most complex things the human body does. Every step requires a small prediction about the terrain, a small correction in real time, a coordination between the vestibular system in the inner ear, the proprioceptive system in the joints, the motor cortex, the cerebellum, and the visual cortex. In other words, walking is not just movement, walking is a thinking activity. Research over the last 2 decades has shown that gait speed, how fast a person walks, is one of the strongest single predictors of cognitive decline, all-cause mortality, and functional independence in older adults. This is not because slow walking causes cognitive decline. It is because the brain and the gait system share neural resources, and when one of them begins to fail, the other tends to reflect it early. Here is where it gets interesting. When an older adult walks regularly, several things happen in the brain. The hippocampus, the memory center, shows modest increases in volume in some studies. The production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that supports the survival of existing neurons and the growth of new ones, increases after sustained aerobic exercise. And the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, attention, and executive function, becomes slightly more efficient. I want to be careful here. These are real findings, but they are mostly from observational studies and modest-sized randomized trials. The effect sizes are real but small to moderate. We are not talking about a cure for dementia. We are talking about a meaningful delay, a slowing of decline, and an improvement in the kind of cognitive function that determines whether a 75-year-old can manage their medications, drive safely, or hold a conversation with their grandchildren. There is also a social and emotional dimension that is easy to miss. Most older adults do not walk alone on a treadmill. They walk with a partner, a friend, a dog, a neighbor. The social component activates additional neural systems. The exposure to daylight helps regulate the circadian rhythm, which has a direct effect on sleep quality, which has a direct effect on mood and cognition. Walking is rarely just a mechanical event. It is a small daily neurological workout that happens to involve the legs. So the third mechanism is this. Walking engages the brain in a way that very few other exercises do, because the brain is required to coordinate the movement, and that coordination, repeated daily, seems to feed back into the brain's own maintenance systems.
At this point, I want to be honest about what we know, what we suspect, and what we do not yet know. What is well established? Walking improves endothelial function, modest cardiovascular fitness, and insulin sensitivity in older adults. This has been shown in randomized controlled trials, including trials specifically in populations over 70. The effect sizes are consistent and reproducible. What is supported by strong but not absolute evidence? Walking reduces the risk of falls in community-dwelling older adults when combined with balance training, and it is associated with reduced all-cause mortality in large prospective cohorts. The mortality finding is observational, so we cannot claim causation with certainty, but the consistency across many studies makes it credible. What is biologically plausible but still preliminary? The claim that walking directly increases hippocampal volume in older adults is supported by some intervention studies, but sample sizes have been small, and the effect has not been reproduced in every cohort. The same is true of the BDNF response. It is a reasonable mechanism, and it fits what we know about exercise and the brain, but we should not present it as a guaranteed outcome. What we do not yet know: whether walking alone without any other form of exercise is sufficient to preserve independence at very advanced ages. The honest answer is probably not for everyone, particularly for those who need strength training to prevent sarcopenia. Walking is the foundation, it is not the entire building. I am telling you this because I want you to trust the rest of what I am saying. Now, the protocol. This is the part I want you to be able to use tomorrow morning. First, the frequency. Aim for walking on most days of the week, ideally 5 to 7 days. Frequency matters more than duration for older adults because the body adapts to repeated small signals better than to occasional large ones. Second, the duration. Start with whatever you can do without pain. For many 75-year-olds, that is 10 minutes. Build to 25 to 30 minutes continuously. If you cannot do it continuously, 2 15-minute walks are essentially equivalent. The total weekly volume of roughly 150 minutes of moderate walking is consistent with the World Health Organization's physical activity recommendations for adults over 65. The intensity: use the talk test. You should be able to speak in full sentences while walking, but you should feel slightly warmer and breathe a little more deeply than at rest. If you can sing, you are walking too slowly. If you cannot speak, you are walking too fast. The form: look roughly 15 meters ahead, not down at your feet. Keep your shoulders relaxed, let your arms swing naturally. Land with your heel and roll through to your toes. If you use a cane or a walker, use it. It is not a sign of failure. It is a tool that lets you walk longer. Fifth, the surface. Flat, even, well-lit, and free of obstacles. If you can walk outside, the variability of the terrain adds to the proprioceptive demand and engages the brain even more. If outside is not safe, a hallway, a mall, or a treadmill at 1 to 2% incline is fine. Sixth, the timing. Morning walks tend to support circadian rhythm and sleep. Late afternoon walks are also fine. Avoid the first hour after a large meal if reflux is a problem. Seventh, what to add. Walking is the foundation, not the ceiling. If your physician approves, 2 short sessions of light resistance work per week, bodyweight squats, sit to stand from a chair, gentle heel raises, will preserve muscle mass in a way that walking alone cannot. Eighth, who needs to talk to a doctor first? Anyone with recent chest pain, uncontrolled blood pressure, recent surgery, joint replacement within the last 3 months, a recent fall without explanation, or symptoms like shortness of breath at rest. Walking is low risk, but it is not zero risk. If any of those apply, please get a clinical evaluation before starting. And finally, the errors to avoid. Do not start with 60-minute walks. Do not walk on uneven terrain in the dark. Do not ignore foot pain. It is information, not weakness. Do not compare your pace to anyone else's. And do not stop on the day you feel slightly tired. The point of walking is to be repeatable for years, not to be heroic once.
I want to come back to the woman I mentioned at the very beginning, the one walking around the block in ordinary shoes at a pace her grandchildren would call slow. She was not doing nothing. She was not wasting her time. She was, every single morning, sending 3 coordinated signals to her body. She was telling her blood vessels to stay elastic, she was telling her bones to keep their density, and she was telling her brain to keep coordinating movement, balance, and thought at the same time. 3 systems, 1 simple stimulus, repeated daily for decades. The fitness industry spent those same decades telling her that she was not doing enough. The research, quietly, said otherwise. So if you are 75 or 78 or 82, here is the question I would like you to take with you. Not, is walking enough? That is the wrong question. The right question is this: what is the most reliable, repeatable, low-injury, brain-engaging, vascular-stimulating, bone-loading movement I can do for the next 20 years of my life? The answer, for most people, is the one your grandmother was already doing, slowly, around the block, tomorrow morning. If this changed the way you think about movement, share it with someone over 75 in your life. Not to convince them, just to see what they say. Many of them already knew. They just never had the biology explained to them.